Trade ties and the Ukraine war dominating the agenda in talks between the leaders of Germany and China. Chancellor Olaf Scholz held discussions with Chinese President Xi Jinping as well as Premier Qiang in Beijing on the final leg of his trip. Mr. Xi hailed the cooperation between their two countries, describing it as not a risk but a guarantee for their stability and the future.
我们要从长远和战略角度全方位看待和发展双边关系，牢牢把握中德是全方位战略伙伴这一共识，携手为世界注入更多稳定性和确定性。
Herr Präsident, ich freue mich, dass seit meinem letzten Besuch hier im November 2022 ein intensiver Austausch zwischen unseren Regierungen in Gang gekommen ist. Wir haben viel miteinander zu besprechen. Wichtiger Meilenstein waren die erfolgreichen 7. deutsch-chinesischen Regierungskonsultationen vergangenen Mai in Berlin. In den vergangenen 2 Tagen habe ich mit einer Wirtschaftsdelegation Chongqing und Shanghai besucht, und so sind auch die Wirtschaftsbeziehungen ein Thema, auf dessen Diskussion ich mich freue.
The German Chancellor added he does not want his country to decouple from China, a sentiment echoed by Chinese Premier Qiang, who says their economic interests are deeply intertwined and they should instead deepen cooperation. Mr. Scholz also pressed the issue of the Ukraine war during his talks, asking Mr. Xi to use his influence with Russia to try to stop the war. CNA's Olivia Siong with more details of talks between Mr. Scholz and Mr. Xi.
We see a very lengthy readout on Chinese state media reporting on this meeting between the two leaders, which took place at a government state guest house here in Beijing. We're also told that the two leaders not only held talks, but then also went for a walk and even had lunch later on, where they exchanged so-called views on a wide range of issues. But if we were to look at the underlying messaging, it's quite clear what was top of mind for the Chinese president, and that's trying to get the German leader to hold off on any moves that may hurt the fragile recovery of China's economy following the COVID-19 pandemic. This being the first trip also that the German leader is making since talking about the de-risking strategy and reducing reliance on Chinese goods and supply chains. But Mr. Xi reportedly told Mr. Scholz that the markets of both countries are highly dependent on each other, and that mutually beneficial cooperation is not a risk, but the guarantee instead for a stable bilateral relationship and an opportunity for the future. Specifically, Mr. Xi saying that there was potential in traditional sectors like manufacturing and automobiles, but also in new areas including the green transition, digitization, and artificial intelligence as well, saying it is important that both sides enable each other to succeed. Now, this comes as trade tensions have been at the fore with concerns over Chinese overcapacity, and we do know that Mr. Xi and Chinese authorities have been talking about pushing what it calls new productive forces or advanced manufacturing to boost its economy following the COVID-19 pandemic. Also, as the European Union is looking into that investigation and possible additional tariffs on, for example, electric vehicles. Another concern also from China that what's clear is that it views actions by the US-led West and increasingly Europe as trying to contain China's rise. And addressing these concerns, President Xi telling the German leader that it is important for the two countries to stay vigilant against the rise of protectionism. Besides the economy, one of the key things we were looking out for were statements about Russia's war in Ukraine. We had been expecting the German Chancellor to put pressure on China to over its involvement and close ties with Moscow, also warning it not to supply dual-use products to China. Now, there was no specific mention of this so-called pressure from the German side on China from the Chinese readout, but China has previously refuted these accusations. Instead, what we saw reported in Chinese state media was that the two leaders had an in-depth exchange of views on Ukraine, with President Xi calling for all parties to commit to an early restoration of peace to prevent the conflict from escalating. Mr. Xi also saying that China is not a party to the Ukraine crisis, but has promoted talks for peace in its own way, as it continues to maintain that it adopts a neutral position when it comes to the Ukraine war.